I still remember the exact moment my whole world shifted. It was a Tuesday evening in late September, and I was sitting in my living room, the same living room where I had raised my children, where I had celebrated countless birthdays and mourned devastating losses, where I had built an entire life over 32 years of marriage. The sun was setting through the bay window, casting golden light across the hardwood floors that my late husband Robert and I had installed ourselves back in 1993, sweating through a hot August weekend while the boys ran around us playing with the leftover wood scraps. My name is Margaret, though everyone calls me Maggie. I was 63 years old at the time, recently retired from my 35-year career as a high school English teacher, and I had finally started to figure out who I was outside of being someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's colleague. For the first time in my adult life, I was learning to be just Maggie. I had joined a book club at the local library, started taking watercolor classes on Wednesday mornings, and had even begun planning a trip to Ireland, something Robert and I had always talked about but never gotten around to doing. The house felt too big most days, especially in the evenings when the silence pressed against me like a physical weight. But I was learning to fill it with my own thoughts, my own projects, my own rhythms. I had moved my sewing machine into the spare bedroom and spent hours creating quilts, each one a meditation on loss and love and the strange journey of grief. I had discovered that I actually liked cooking for one, could eat cereal for dinner if I wanted, could stay up until 2 a.m. reading without anyone asking when I was coming to bed. My phone rang, and I saw my son's name flash across the screen. Daniel, my youngest, my baby, even though he was 34 years old with a wife and 2 children of his own. He called every Sunday like clockwork, but it was Tuesday, and the unexpected ring made my heart skip. Maggie. Hello, sweetheart. How are you? Daniel. Mom, are you sitting down? My heart immediately started racing. Those words never preceded good news. I could feel my blood pressure rising, could feel the familiar grip of anxiety that had haunted me since Robert's sudden death from a heart attack 5 years earlier. Maggie. I'm sitting. What's wrong? Are the kids okay? Is everyone healthy? Just tell me, Daniel. You're scaring me. Daniel. Everyone's fine, Mom. Healthy. It's just, we need to talk about something important. Can I come over tomorrow? Maybe around dinner time? Maggie. Of course, honey. Should I make your favorite? The pot roast with the little red potatoes the way your father liked it? Daniel. That would be great, Mom. And Vanessa's coming too. And maybe bring the kids. Maggie. The whole family? Daniel. You're really scaring me now. Just tell me what's going on. Please. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing, could almost feel his hesitation through the phone, across the 20 miles that separated his house from mine. Daniel. It's better if we talk in person. I love you, Mom. See you tomorrow. He hung up before I could say anything else. I sat there in the fading light, my mind spinning with possibilities. Were they getting divorced? I had noticed tension between Daniel and Vanessa at the last family gathering. Quick, sharp words exchanged when they thought no one was listening. Was someone sick? Daniel had mentioned that Vanessa's mother had been having health problems, but he said she was recovering. Had Daniel lost his job again? He had struggled to find stable employment after being laid off from his first position out of law school, and I knew the stress of it had aged him prematurely. The last time he had been this cryptic was when he told me Vanessa was pregnant with their first child, Emma. That had been happy news. Life-changing, but happy. But his voice tonight hadn't sounded happy. It had sounded tired, defeated, scared. I barely slept that night. I tossed and turned, my mind creating scenarios each more dramatic than the last. I got up at 3 a.m. and made myself chamomile tea, sitting at the kitchen table in the dark and trying to calm my racing thoughts. I thought about calling my older son Marcus, who was stationed at a military base in Germany, but it would be early morning there and I didn't want to worry him unnecessarily. By morning, I was exhausted but determined to keep myself busy. I went to the grocery store as soon as it opened, wandering the aisles and filling my cart with everything I needed for pot roast, fresh vegetables, crusty bread from the bakery section. I picked up fresh flowers for the dining table, a bouquet of sunflowers and daisies that reminded me of the garden Robert used to tend. I even baked a chocolate cake from scratch, using my mother's recipe that had been passed down through 3 generations. Keeping my hands busy was the only way I knew how to manage anxiety. It was a skill I had developed during Robert's illness, when he was diagnosed with high blood pressure and the doctor warned us about his heart. I had spent those years cooking healthy meals, researching treatments, doing everything I could to control the uncontrollable. And then one morning, he collapsed in the backyard while watering his tomatoes, and nothing I had done mattered at all. By 6 o'clock, I had set the table with my good china, the delicate set that Robert's mother had given us as a wedding present 40 years ago. The plates had tiny blue flowers around the edges and gold trim that had faded over the years, but still caught the light beautifully. I had changed into a nice blouse and slacks, put on a little makeup for the first time in weeks, and was pacing by the front door when I heard the car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I watched Daniel help his daughter Emma out of her car seat. She was 5 years old, with her mother's dark hair and her father's mischievous smile. She was wearing a purple dress that I had bought her for her birthday, and her hair was pulled back in 2 uneven pigtails. Behind her, I saw my grandson Oliver, who was 3, clutching his stuffed dinosaur like his life depended on it. The dinosaur's name was Rex, and Oliver had carried it everywhere since he was 18 months old. Vanessa emerged from the passenger side, and even from this distance, I could see the tension in her shoulders. She was a beautiful woman, with dark eyes and olive skin that spoke to her Italian heritage. But tonight she looked worn, exhausted in a way that went beyond simple tiredness. I opened the door before they could knock. Maggie. "There are my beautiful grandchildren. Come give Grandma a hug." Emma ran into my arms, her little body warm and smelling like baby shampoo. I held her tight, breathing in the simple sweetness of her presence. "Emma, Grandma, I missed you so much. Daddy said we're going to have a big talk tonight. Is it about a surprise? Is it a good surprise or a bad surprise?" I looked at Daniel over her head, but his expression was unreadable. He was wearing the same tired look I had seen on the phone, only worse in person. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he had lost weight since I had seen him a month ago. "Maggie, I'm not sure, sweetheart. Let's go inside and have some dinner first, okay? I made chocolate cake for dessert." "Emma, chocolate cake! Oliver, did you hear? Grandma made chocolate cake." Oliver toddled over for his hug, still clutching Rex with one arm. He was quieter than his sister, more observant. He had his father's eyes, deep brown and thoughtful. Oliver, "Can Rex have cake too?" Maggie, "Of course Rex can have cake. Every dinosaur deserves chocolate cake." We filed inside, and I busied myself with the final preparations for dinner, while Vanessa helped the children wash their hands, and Daniel stood awkwardly in the kitchen doorway, watching me work. Daniel, "Mom, let me help you with something." Maggie, "You can set out the wine glasses. There's a bottle of red breathing on the counter." Daniel, "You're drinking wine on a Tuesday?" Maggie, "I'm retired. Every day is Saturday now." He almost smiled at that. Almost. Dinner was pleasant enough on the surface. The children chattered about their days at preschool and kindergarten, about their friends and their teachers and the caterpillar they had found in the backyard that had turned into a butterfly and flown away. Emma described in painstaking detail every single one of her classmates' Halloween costume plans. Oliver made his dinosaur walk across the table and eat imaginary vegetables. Vanessa complimented my cooking, as she always did. She had seconds of the pot roast and thirds of the mashed potatoes, which made me wonder when she had last had a proper home-cooked meal. Daniel ate silently, pushing his food around his plate more than actually consuming it. I watched him not eating and felt my anxiety rise with every untouched bite. After dinner, Vanessa took the children into the living room to watch a movie while Daniel helped me clear the table. We stood side by side at the sink, me washing, him drying, just like we had done countless times when he was growing up. The familiarity of it was comforting, even as the tension between us grew. Daniel, "Mom, there's no easy way to say this." Maggie, "Then just say it, honey. The anticipation has been killing me since last night. I've imagined every terrible thing possible." Daniel, "We're losing the house." I stopped scrubbing the pot in my hands and turned to look at him. Water dripped from my fingers onto the floor, but I didn't move to dry them. Maggie, "What do you mean losing the house?" "Your house?" Daniel, "The mortgage company. We're 3 months behind on payments. They've started foreclosure proceedings. I got laid off from the firm 6 months ago, Mom. I didn't want to tell you because I thought I'd find something else quickly, but the job market is terrible right now for someone my age with my experience. They want younger lawyers who they can pay less and work harder. I've sent out over 200 applications and gotten exactly 3 interviews." Maggie, 6 months? "Daniel, why didn't you tell me?" His face crumpled, and suddenly, he wasn't my 34-year-old son anymore. He was the little boy who had come home crying because the other kids made fun of his glasses, the teenager who couldn't understand why his father had to work so many hours, the young man who had struggled to find his place in the world after college. Daniel, "Because I'm supposed to be the one taking care of things now. Dad's been gone for 5 years and I promised him. I promised him on his deathbed that I would look after you and the family. Instead, I can't even keep a roof over my own children's heads. What kind of man am I, Mom? What kind of father? I set down the pot and pulled him into my arms. He was taller than me now, had been for 20 years, but in that moment, he felt small. His shoulders shook with suppressed sobs, and I held him the way I had held him when he was 5 years old and afraid of the monster in his closet. Maggie, your father never expected you to be perfect, sweetheart. He just wanted you to be happy. He wanted you to know you were loved no matter what. Daniel. Mom, there's more. He pulled back, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. He looked so tired, so defeated, that it broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. Daniel. Vanessa's mother, Linda. She's been living with us for the past 8 months. She had a stroke last year, remember? She can't live alone anymore, and we couldn't afford to put her in a care facility. The decent ones cost more than our mortgage payment. Maggie. I remember. You told me she was doing better. You told me she was recovering well. Daniel. I lied. I've been lying about a lot of things because I didn't want you to worry. The stroke damaged the left side of her brain. She has limited mobility in her left arm and leg. She needs help with basic things like bathing and dressing. Her speech is slurred sometimes, and she gets confused. She's not the same person she was before. I leaned against the counter, trying to absorb everything he was telling me. It was too much, too fast. My brain couldn't process it all. Daniel. Mom, we've talked about it, Vanessa and I, and we don't have anywhere else to go. Vanessa's sister lives in a tiny one-bedroom apartment in New York City. There's literally no room for us. Marcus is in Germany with the military, and even if he wasn't, he's got his own family to worry about. We've looked at rentals, but with our credit destroyed and no income, no one will take us. We've been rejected by 17 different landlords. Maggie. What are you asking me, Daniel? He took a deep breath, and I could see him gathering his courage like a soldier preparing for battle. Daniel. My wife, mother-in-law, and kids are moving in. It's crowded, but we've decided we have no other choice. Mom, we need to move in with you. All 5 of us. Me, Vanessa, Linda, Emma, and Oliver. I know it's a lot to ask. I know this house is your sanctuary, your space, the life you've built for yourself since Dad died. But I don't know what else to do. I'm desperate, Mom. I'm completely, utterly desperate. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the movie playing in the other room, could hear Oliver laughing at something on the screen. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, could feel the floor shifting beneath my feet, even though I knew it was solid. My beautiful, quiet home, my peaceful retirement, my carefully constructed new identity as just Maggie. All of it suddenly felt fragile, like a house of cards that one strong breath could destroy. And then I looked at my son's face, at the shame and desperation written in every line, and I knew there was only one answer I could give. Maggie. Of course you can move in. This is your home. It always has been. The relief that washed over his face was worth every ounce of hesitation I felt. He hugged me again, tighter this time, clinging to me like he was drowning and I was the only solid ground. Daniel, thank you, Mom. Thank you. I promise it's temporary. Just until I get back on my feet. I'll find a job. I'll save money. We'll be out of your hair as soon as possible. Maggie, we'll figure it out together. That's what family does. But even as I said the words, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered warnings. Linda and I had never been close. In fact, if I was being honest with myself, we had barely been civil. She had never thought I was good enough for Robert, had made her opinions about my modest background clear at every family gathering for the past 4 decades. She came from money, old money, and she had never let me forget that I came from nothing. At my wedding, she had worn black. At Emma's christening, she had criticized the church. At every holiday dinner, she had found something wrong with my cooking, my decorating, my parenting choices, and now she was going to be living in my house. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Daniel and Vanessa worked frantically to sell what furniture they could, to pack up their lives and prepare for the move. They held a yard sale that broke my heart, watching strangers paw through the belongings that had made their house a home. Emma's baby furniture went for $50. The dining room table where they had celebrated 5 years of holidays sold for $200. I tried to prepare the house, clearing out the guest room for Linda, buying a hospital bed and installing grab bars in the bathroom. I set up the basement bedroom for Daniel and Vanessa, adding a fresh coat of paint and new curtains to try to make it feel less like a basement. And I converted my sewing room into a space for the children. The sewing room had been my sanctuary. After Robert died, I had thrown myself into quilting with a passion that surprised everyone, including myself. The repetitive motion of cutting and piecing and stitching had saved my sanity during those dark first months of grief. I had made quilts for every grandchild, every niece and nephew, every friend who had a baby or got married or needed comfort. The room was filled with fabric and patterns and half-finished projects that represented my grief transformed into something beautiful. Packing it all into boxes to make room for bunk beds and toy chests felt like packing away a piece of my soul. I stood in the empty room after the last box was sealed, running my hand over the bare walls, and I let myself cry. Just for a moment. Just long enough to mourn what I was losing before I had to face what I was gaining. Moving day arrived with the subtlety of a hurricane. Boxes everywhere, furniture being carried in by Daniel's friends from college who had remained loyal through all his struggles, children running around underfoot screaming with excitement at the novelty of it all, the smell of pizza and sweat and cardboard filling every room. And then Linda arrived. She came through the front door in a wheelchair, pushed by a home health aide who had been hired for the transition. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished somehow by her stroke and the passage of time. Her left arm hung limply at her side, and the left corner of her mouth drooped slightly, giving her face a perpetually disapproving expression. But her eyes were the same. Sharp, assessing, critical. They swept over my living room, over the chaos of boxes and people, and I saw the judgment there as clearly as if she had spoken it aloud. I saw her take in the faded wallpaper that I had been meaning to replace, the worn spot on the carpet where Robert's recliner used to sit, the water stain on the ceiling from the leak I had fixed myself last spring. Linda, well, Margaret, it seems the tables have turned. Her voice was slightly slurred from the stroke, but the condescension came through crystal clear. 40 years of snide comments, and she hadn't lost her edge. Maggie. Hello, Linda. Welcome to my home. I hope you'll be comfortable here. Linda. Comfortable. Yes, I'm sure I'll be perfectly comfortable in your quaint little house. I bit back the response that wanted to escape my lips. This was going to be harder than I thought. The first month was an exercise in patience that I didn't know I possessed. Linda complained about everything. The temperature was too cold or too hot, the food was too bland or too spicy, the television was too loud or too quiet. My coffee was too weak. My tea was too strong. The mattress in her room was too firm. The pillows were too soft. She found fault with the way I folded towels, the brand of soap I bought, the color of the walls in her room. Linda. This shade of blue is depressing. It's like living in a hospital room. Maggie. I painted it blue because I read that blue is calming, promotes good sleep. Linda. Well, you read wrong. It promotes misery. Linda. This soup is too salty. Are you trying to raise my blood pressure? Maggie. I used low-sodium broth, Linda. It's actually quite bland. Linda. Bland and salty. Quite an achievement. One evening, I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard her talking to Vanessa in the living room. They didn't know I could hear them through the open window that connected the kitchen to the back porch. Linda. I don't understand why you had to bring the children here of all places. Margaret has never liked me. She's always resented me for trying to give Robert guidance. Vanessa. That's not true, Mom. Maggie has been incredibly generous to take all of us in. She gave up her sewing room for the kids. She's been cooking for 6 people every night. She hasn't complained once. Linda. Generous? She's Robert's mother. It's her duty to help her son. Besides, I'm sure she loves having people here to remind her that she's needed. Women like her, they live for that kind of thing. They need to be needed. I gripped the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. Women like her, as if she knew anything about who I was or what I lived for. Vanessa. Mom, please. We need to make this work. For the kids. Emma and Oliver need stability right now. Linda. Fine. But don't expect me to pretend I enjoy being dependent on someone else's charity. I had my own home, my own life, my own independence. And now look at me. Trapped in a wheelchair in Margaret's quaint little house. I wanted to march in there and defend myself. I wanted to tell her that her precious son, my beloved husband, had chosen me despite her objections, that we had built a beautiful life together, a life that had nothing to do with her money or her approval, that I had held his hand when he died, and she hadn't even made it to the hospital in time. But what would be the point? It would only make things worse. It would only hurt Daniel, who was already carrying so much guilt. So instead, I finished making dinner and served it with a smile that felt like it was carved from stone. As the weeks passed, the strain began to show on everyone. Daniel was applying for jobs constantly, spending hours at the library using their computers since he had sold his laptop to help pay for the move. He came home every evening looking more defeated than the day before, the rejections piling up like stones on his chest. Vanessa tried to keep the peace between her mother and me, while also managing 2 active children in a house that suddenly felt half its size. She developed dark circles under her eyes that matched her husband's. She started getting migraines, terrible ones that sent her to bed for hours at a time. The children, God bless them, were adapting as children do, with remarkable resilience and occasional explosive meltdowns that left everyone exhausted. Emma started having nightmares about losing her toys, which she interpreted as losing her home. She would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, and I would go to her and hold her until she fell back asleep. Emma, Grandma, what if we have to move again? What if we have to leave here too? Maggie, you're not going anywhere, sweetheart. This is your home now. Emma, but what if Daddy can't find a job? What if we run out of money again? Maggie, your daddy is going to find a wonderful job. And no matter what happens, you will always have a home with me. I promise. Oliver became clingy and refused to let Daniel out of his sight. Every time Daniel left for a job interview or to run errands, Oliver would cling to his leg and sob. The therapist we eventually consulted said it was separation anxiety, triggered by the trauma of losing his home. He needed extra reassurance, extra patience, extra love. One night, I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, everyone else in bed, but my mind refused to settle. I went downstairs to make myself some tea and found Daniel sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, his head in his hands. Maggie, sweetheart? Are you okay? He looked up at me, and even in the dim light from the street lamp outside, I could see the tears on his cheeks. My strong, capable son, the one who had always tried so hard to hold everything together, was falling apart. Daniel, I'm so sorry, Mom. This isn't fair to you. None of this is fair to you. I sat down across from him and took his hands in mine. They were cold, trembling slightly. Maggie, life isn't always fair, Daniel. That doesn't mean we give up. Daniel, but you were finally happy. You had your routines, your quilting, your book club, your life. You were learning how to be yourself again after Dad died, and we came in and destroyed all of it. Maggie, you didn't destroy anything. You're my family. This is what family does. Daniel, Linda hates it here. She hates you, Mom. I hear the things she says when she thinks no one is listening, and I don't know how you stand it. I don't know how you don't scream at her. Maggie, I stand it because I love you. I stand it because Emma and Oliver need a stable home while you get back on your feet. I stand it because your father would have done the same thing, and I refuse to let his memory down. Daniel, Dad was a saint. Maggie, your father was a human being who made plenty of mistakes. He was impatient and stubborn, and he never learned how to apologize properly. But he always showed up for the people he loved. That's what I'm trying to do now. That's what you're trying to do too. Daniel squeezed my hands and then let go, wiping his face with the back of his hand. Daniel, I got a call back today. For a job at a smaller firm downtown. It doesn't pay as much as my old position, maybe 60% of what I was making before. But it's something. It's real. Maggie, that's wonderful news. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Daniel, because I've had callbacks before that didn't work out. 3 of them. And each time I got my hopes up, each time I told Vanessa and the kids, and then I had to watch their faces fall when I told them I didn't get it. I can't do that again. I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up, especially the kids. They've been through so much. Maggie, well, I'll keep my fingers crossed, and my toes, and anything else I can cross. He actually laughed at that. A real laugh. The first one I had heard from him in months. The sound of it filled me with more hope than any words could have. Daniel, thanks, Mom, for everything. For putting up with Linda. For feeding us. For not making me feel like a failure even though I clearly am one. Maggie, you are not a failure. You are a man who hit hard times and did what he had to do to protect his family. There's no shame in that. There's only courage. Daniel, when did you get so wise? Maggie, I've always been wise. You were just too young to notice. Daniel, get some sleep, honey. Tomorrow is a new day. The interview was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, life continued its chaotic new normal. I tried to establish routines that would work for everyone. Breakfast at 7 for the adults, 7:30 for the children. Quiet time in the afternoon while Oliver napped and Emma had screen time. Dinner at 6, baths at 7, bedtime at 8. Linda resisted every attempt at structure. She wanted breakfast at 9. She wanted the television on during quiet time. She complained that dinner was too early, too late, too something. The morning of Daniel's interview, I was making breakfast when Linda wheeled herself into the kitchen. Her physical therapist had been working with her for weeks, and she had regained some mobility in her left arm, though she still needed the wheelchair for longer distances. Linda, is that bacon? The doctor said I shouldn't eat bacon. The fat content is dangerous for someone in my condition. Maggie, it's turkey bacon, Linda. Lower sodium and fat. Linda, it doesn't smell like turkey bacon. It smells like regular bacon. It smells like you're trying to kill me with cholesterol. I took a deep breath and counted to 10. Then I counted to 10 again. Maggie, would you prefer oatmeal? I have the instant kind you like. Linda, the instant kind I like? I've never said I liked instant oatmeal. Instant oatmeal is for people who don't know how to cook proper oatmeal. My mother made oatmeal from scratch every morning, steel-cut oats with fresh cream and brown sugar. Maggie, then I'll make you proper oatmeal. Linda, don't bother. I'm not hungry. I'll just sit here and watch you feed my grandchildren processed meat. She wheeled herself to the kitchen table and sat there, arms crossed as best she could with her limited mobility, watching me with those sharp, critical eyes. That afternoon, while Daniel was at his interview and Vanessa had taken the kids to the park to burn off some energy, I found myself alone in the house with Linda. She was in the living room, watching a game show and criticizing every contestant's intelligence. Linda, that answer is obvious. Anyone with half a brain would know that the capital of Montana is Helena. These people are morons. I was in the sunroom, trying to read a book and failing spectacularly. Every few minutes, Linda would make another comment, another criticism, and I would lose my place in the paragraph I was reading. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the months of accumulated frustration. Maybe it was the exhaustion of constantly walking on eggshells, constantly swallowing my anger, constantly being the bigger person. Maybe it was just time. Maybe I had simply reached my limit. I put down my book, walked into the living room, and turned off the television. Linda, what do you think you're doing? I was watching that. Maggie, we need to talk, Linda. Really talk. Not the polite small talk we've been doing for 40 years. A real conversation. Linda, I have nothing to say to you. Maggie, then you can listen, because I have plenty to say to you. I sat down in the chair across from her wheelchair, close enough that she couldn't avoid looking at me. Maggie, I know you don't like me. You've never liked me. From the moment Robert brought me home to meet you, you looked at me like I was something he had tracked in on the bottom of his shoe. You thought your son could do better than a girl from the wrong side of town who became a high school teacher instead of a doctor or a lawyer or whatever you thought he deserved? Linda, Robert was brilliant. He had a genius-level IQ. He could have married anyone. He could have married into one of the best families in the state. Maggie, he could have, but he chose me. And we were happy, Linda. We were happy for 37 years until he died in my arms from a heart attack in our backyard. Do you know what his last words were? She didn't answer, but something flickered in her eyes. Something that might have been curiosity or might have been fear. Maggie, he said, tell Mom I love her. Even at the end, when his heart was failing and he knew he was dying, he was thinking about you. He loved you despite everything, despite the way you treated me, despite the holidays you ruined with your snide comments and the birthdays you overshadowed with your passive-aggressive gifts. Linda, I never ruined any holidays. I simply maintained standards. Maggie, you made Daniel cry on his 10th birthday because you told him his party was tacky. Do you remember that? He had chosen a dinosaur theme because he loved dinosaurs, because his father used to take him to the Natural History Museum every month to look at the fossils. And you told him that themes were for children who didn't have any real personality. Something shifted in Linda's expression. Not remorse, not exactly, but something. A shadow of recognition, perhaps. Or maybe just surprise that I remembered. Linda, I don't remember that. Maggie, I do. I remember every single moment, Linda. Every cutting remark. Every dismissive glance. Every time you made me feel like I wasn't enough. I remember the Christmas you gave me a cookbook called Cooking for the Culinarily Challenged. I remember the Easter you told me my ham was dry in front of both of my sons. I remember the birthday you forgot entirely, and when I mentioned it, you said you didn't realize we were still celebrating birthdays at my age. Linda, you're exaggerating. Maggie, I'm not. I have 40 years of memories, Linda. Every slight, every insult, every moment you made me feel small. And you know what? I survived all of it. I raised 2 beautiful sons who became good men despite your interference. I built a career that touched thousands of students' lives. I made a marriage that lasted until death actually did us part. And now I'm offering you a home when you have nowhere else to go. Linda's hands tightened on the arms of her wheelchair. Her knuckles were white, her jaw clenched. Linda, I didn't ask for your charity. Maggie, no, you didn't. But here we are anyway. So we can spend the next however many months making each other miserable, sniping and criticizing and dying slowly of resentment. Or we can try to find some kind of peace. For Daniel's sake, for the grandchildren's sake, maybe even for our own sakes. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. Outside, I could hear birds singing, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding in my living room. I could hear a car passing on the street, a dog barking somewhere in the distance. Linda, you think you're better than me, don't you? Maggie, no, Linda. I think we're both flawed human beings who have made mistakes and hurt people and been hurt in return. I think we're both old women who have lost our husbands and watched our bodies fail us and wondered what the point of any of it is. I think we're more alike than either of us wants to admit. Linda, we are nothing alike. Maggie, fine. Then we're nothing alike. But we're stuck together, so we might as well make the best of it. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something I had never seen before in her eyes. Uncertainty. For 40 years, Linda had been confident in her superiority, secure in her position as the matriarch of a wealthy family. And now she was dependent on me, the woman she had looked down on for 4 decades. Linda, the oatmeal this morning. I actually do prefer it instant. The texture is better. The steel-cut kind gets stuck in my teeth. It was such a small thing, such a tiny admission, but it felt like a door cracking open. Just a crack. Just enough to let a sliver of light through. Maggie, I'll remember that. I turned the television back on and went back to my book. We didn't speak again for the rest of the afternoon, but something had changed. The air felt lighter somehow. The silence was less hostile, more companionable. Daniel got the job. He called from the car, his voice shaking with relief and excitement. Daniel, they want me to start Monday. Mom, they want me to start Monday. I got the job. Maggie, I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. I knew you could do it. I knew something good would happen. Daniel, it's going to take time to save up for a new place. Probably at least a year, maybe more with the debt we have to pay off. Are you sure you're okay with us staying that long? Maggie, Daniel, I told you. This is your home for as long as you need it, as long as it takes. When he got home that evening, there was a celebration. Vanessa made a special dinner, chicken parmesan with homemade pasta, a recipe from her grandmother that she only made for special occasions. I broke out the good wine that I had been saving for. I don't know what I had been saving it for. Maybe this, maybe exactly this moment. Emma and Oliver ran around the house screaming with joy, not entirely sure what they were celebrating, but determined to participate fully. Oliver made Rex dance on the table. Emma declared that this was the best day ever, even better than Christmas. Even Linda seemed less hostile than usual. She didn't compliment the dinner, but she didn't criticize it either, which was practically effusive for her. When Vanessa brought out a store-bought cake for dessert, Linda ate 2 slices without a single comment about the quality of the frosting. As the evening wound down and the children were put to bed, I found myself on the back porch, looking up at the stars. The night was clear and cool, the kind of spring night that makes you believe that anything is possible. I could see the Big Dipper, could trace its outline the way Robert had taught me on our first date 41 years ago. Vanessa, mind if I join you? I turned to see my daughter-in-law standing in the doorway, a glass of wine in each hand. She looked more relaxed than I had seen her in months. Maggie, please, I could use the company. She handed me a glass and sat down in the chair beside me. For a moment, we just sat in silence, listening to the crickets and looking at the stars. Vanessa, I wanted to thank you, Maggie, for everything. I know this hasn't been easy for you. Maggie, it hasn't been easy for any of us. Vanessa, my mother especially. I know she's difficult. I know she's been awful to you. But she's scared, Maggie. She's always been terrified of being dependent on anyone, and now she's dependent on everyone. It's killing her pride. Maggie, I had a conversation with her today. A real conversation. I think maybe we reached some kind of understanding. Vanessa, she told me. She said you called her a flawed human being. Maggie, I called both of us flawed human beings. Vanessa, she actually seemed almost pleased about it. I think she respects you more than you know. She's just terrible at showing it. Maggie, she has a funny way of showing respect. Vanessa, she does. But she also told me tonight that she thinks you're stronger than she ever gave you credit for. That's high praise coming from her. That's probably the nicest thing she's ever said about anyone who isn't a blood relative. I took a sip of my wine and let that sink in. Strong. Linda thought I was strong. Vanessa, can I ask you something personal? Maggie, of course. Vanessa, do you ever regret it? Marrying into this family, dealing with all the drama, putting up with my mother for 40 years? I thought about the question carefully before answering. Maggie, I regret a lot of things, Vanessa. I regret not spending more time with Robert when we had the chance. I regret being too strict with my sons when they were teenagers, not letting them make their own mistakes. I regret every cross word I ever spoke and every kind word I held back. But marrying Robert, raising Daniel and his brother, becoming part of this complicated, frustrating, beautiful family, I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Every single moment of it. Vanessa's eyes were shining in the dim light. Vanessa, that's a beautiful thing to say. Maggie, it's the truth. The messy, imperfect truth. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars and listening to the sounds of the night. Eventually, Vanessa went inside to check on the children, and I stayed outside, thinking about everything that had happened and everything that was yet to come. The summer months that followed were challenging but transformative. Daniel started his new job and quickly proved himself indispensable. He worked long hours, determined to show his employers that they had made the right choice. He would leave before the children woke up and often returned after they were in bed. I could see the toll it was taking on him, the exhaustion that settled into his bones, but there was also a light in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Purpose. Hope. Within 2 months, he had won a case that brought in a significant new client, a manufacturing company that needed ongoing legal support. His boss started talking about a promotion, about long-term potential, about the future. For the first time in over a year, Daniel talked about the future without fear in his voice. One evening, he came home early, something that almost never happened. He found me in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup while the children did homework at the table and Linda supervised, offering commentary on Emma's penmanship. Daniel, Mom, can I talk to you for a minute? In private? We stepped out onto the back porch, and he pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Daniel, my first paycheck, the real one, not the signing bonus. I want to give it to you. Maggie, Daniel, no. You need that money. You have debts to pay off. Daniel, I've set up a payment plan for the debts, and you've been feeding and housing 5 people for months without asking for a single cent. Please, let me contribute. I looked at the check, at the amount that represented his hard work and determination, and I understood that this wasn't about money. It was about dignity. It was about him feeling like a man again after months of feeling like a failure. Maggie, okay, but only if you let me put half of it into a savings account for Emma and Oliver's college fund. Daniel, deal. He hugged me, and I felt his shoulders relax for the first time in months. He was going to be okay. We were all going to be okay. Vanessa found part-time work at a local daycare center called Little Sprouts, which had the added benefit of reduced tuition for Oliver. Emma was in kindergarten now, adjusting to her new school with the help of a kind teacher named Mrs. Patterson, who sent home regular updates about her progress. Vanessa discovered that she loved working with children, that she had a gift for it. She would come home with stories about the toddlers in her class, about their discoveries and their dramas and their endless capacity for wonder. Vanessa, there's this little boy, Marcus, who refuses to nap. He just lies there with his eyes wide open, watching the other kids sleep. Today I asked him why he doesn't close his eyes, and he said he's afraid he'll miss something important. Maggie, smart kid, sleep is overrated anyway. Vanessa, I told him that sometimes the most important things happen in our dreams. He thought about it for a full minute and then said, but dreams aren't real, are they? And I didn't know how to answer. Maggie, what did you say? Vanessa, I said that dreams might not be real in the way our waking lives are real, but they're real in the way they make us feel. They're real in the way they help us understand ourselves. Maggie, that's beautiful, Vanessa. That's exactly the kind of teacher those children need. She started taking night classes toward a teaching certification, something she had dreamed about since college but had never pursued. Twice a week, she would leave after dinner and not return until after 10, exhausted but exhilarated. I would save her a plate of whatever I had made, and she would eat it standing at the counter, telling me about educational theory and child development, and the professor who reminded her of Robin Williams in that movie about the poetry teacher. The children thrived, adapting to their new life with the resilience that only young people possess. Emma made friends in her new kindergarten class, particularly a girl named Sophia, who had the same favorite color and the same obsession with unicorns. They were inseparable by October, and Sophia started coming over for playdates that filled the house with giggling and glitter. Oliver learned to ride a tricycle, a process that involved many falls and scraped knees and tears. But he was determined, that boy. Every time he fell, he got back up. Every time he cried, he wiped his tears and tried again. Watching him master that tricycle was like watching his father fight his way back from unemployment. The same determination, the same refusal to give up. They both discovered the joy of having a grandmother who had time. Time to read them stories, choosing a new book from the library every week and doing all the voices. Time to bake them cookies, teaching them how to measure flour and crack eggs, and wait the agonizing 15 minutes while the chocolate chip cookies turned golden in the oven. Time to sit on the floor playing pretend, being the dragon that needed slaying, or the customer in their imaginary restaurant, or the patient in their pretend doctor's office. One Saturday morning, Oliver came to me with a request. Oliver, Grandma, can you teach me to make a quilt? Maggie, a quilt? That's quite a project for a little boy. Oliver, I want to make one for Rex. He gets cold at night. I looked at his serious little face, at the stuffed dinosaur clutched in his arm, and my heart melted. Maggie, well, Rex definitely needs to stay warm. Let's start with something simple. How about a blanket just big enough for a dinosaur? We spent that afternoon cutting fabric scraps and pinning them together. His stitches were crooked and uneven, but he was so proud of them. When the tiny blanket was finished, just big enough to wrap around Rex, Oliver carried it everywhere for a week, showing it to anyone who would look. Oliver, I made this. I put love in the stitches. He had been listening. He had understood. And in that moment, I realized that all the chaos and sacrifice of the past months had been worth it for moments like this. And Linda and I developed something that I wouldn't quite call friendship, but was certainly more than tolerance. The change didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, like the turning of the seasons, so slow that you don't notice it until suddenly the leaves are different colors and the air has changed. It started with the cooking. One evening, I was making dinner when Linda wheeled herself into the kitchen. Linda, that's not how you chop an onion. Maggie, excuse me? Linda, you're cutting it the wrong way. The pieces will be uneven. Here, let me show you. I was ready to be offended, to snap back with something defensive. But then I looked at her face and saw something unexpected. Genuine interest. Not criticism. Teaching. I handed her the knife, and she showed me a technique she had learned from a French chef 60 years ago. A way of cutting that kept the onion together until the very end, resulting in perfect, uniform pieces. Linda. My cook taught me this when I was a young bride. I spent hours in the kitchen with her, learning everything she knew. Maggie. I didn't know you could cook. Linda. I haven't cooked in decades. No need when you can afford staff. But I used to love it. The precision, the transformation of raw ingredients into something nourishing. It felt like magic. After that, she started offering suggestions. Not criticisms exactly, but tips. Ways to improve a sauce, to season a roast, to get the perfect crust on bread. Some of her ideas were brilliant. Others I politely ignored. But the conversations we had while cooking became something I looked forward to. She started joining me for morning coffee, wheeling herself into the kitchen while I prepared breakfast. At first, our conversations were stilted, functional exchanges about the weather and the news. Linda, the forecast says rain today. Maggie, I saw that. I'll have to bring the cushions in from the porch chairs. But gradually, they deepened. She told me about her childhood, about growing up wealthy but lonely, with parents who valued status over affection. She told me about her marriage, about how she had loved Robert Sr. deeply but had never known how to show it. She told me about the stroke, about waking up unable to move half her body, about the terror of realizing she might never walk again. Linda, I thought I was going to die. In that hospital bed, unable to speak properly, unable to hold my own daughter's hand. I thought, this is it. This is how it ends. Alone and helpless and afraid. Maggie, you weren't alone. Vanessa was there. Linda, Vanessa had children to take care of, a husband who was losing his job. She had her own burdens. She didn't need mine too. Maggie, that's not how family works, Linda. We share each other's burdens. That's the whole point. One morning, she surprised me with a confession. Linda, Margaret, I want to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone. Maggie, what is it? Linda, when Robert brought you home to meet us for the first time, I was so jealous I could barely see straight. I nearly dropped my coffee cup. Maggie, Jealous? Of me? Why? You had everything. Money, status, a beautiful home. Linda. Because he looked at you the way his father used to look at me, before everything went wrong between us. Before the arguments and the resentment and the separate bedrooms, Robert Sr. and I, we lost each other somewhere along the way. We stayed married for appearances, but we weren't really a couple anymore. And then I saw my son looking at you with all that love, all that joy, and I knew in that moment that you were going to have what I had lost. Maggie. Linda, I never tried to take Robert away from you. Linda. I know that now. But back then, I was young and stupid and scared of losing my son. So I did everything I could to push you away, to make you feel unwelcome, to show Robert that he could do better. And all I managed to do was push Robert away too. He barely spoke to me for years after you got married. He only called on holidays. He only visited when you made him. Maggie. I never knew that. Robert always spoke so lovingly about you. Linda. That was later, after he forgave me. But those early years were hard. He chose you over me, and I couldn't accept it. I couldn't accept that my little boy was a man now, with a wife of his own, a life of his own. Maggie. He didn't choose me over you, Linda. He chose to build his own life. That's what children are supposed to do. That's what we raise them to do. Linda. I know that now. I've had a lot of time to think since the stroke. When you're lying in a hospital bed, unable to move half your body, you have nothing to do but think. And regret. God, the regrets I have. Maggie. We all have regrets. Linda. Yes, but mine are particularly extensive. She actually smiled when she said it, a real smile that transformed her face. For a moment, I could see the young woman she must have been, before disappointment and bitterness had carved lines around her mouth. Linda. I'm sorry, Margaret, for all of it. I'm sorry I never gave you a chance. I'm sorry I wasted decades being bitter and resentful instead of appreciating what was right in front of me. I'm sorry I missed all those moments with my grandchildren because I was too proud to admit that you had built something beautiful without my approval. And I'm sorry I've been such a burden these past months, complaining about everything, making your life difficult. Maggie. You're not a burden, Linda. You're family. Difficult family, perhaps, but family nonetheless. Linda. That's the nicest insult anyone's ever given me. We both laughed, and something broke open between us. Not all the walls, not completely, but enough. Enough to let light in. As the months passed, our household found its rhythm. Saturday mornings became pancake mornings, with everyone crowded around the kitchen table while I flipped flapjacks, and Daniel made a mess with the batter. Emma liked hers with chocolate chips. Oliver preferred plain with maple syrup. Linda insisted on blueberries, claiming they were good for cognitive function. Sunday afternoons were for family walks in the park, Linda in her wheelchair, the children running ahead to chase pigeons, the adults strolling behind and catching up on the week. We would stop at the ice cream shop on the way home, and Emma would always get strawberry while Oliver vacillated between chocolate and vanilla, eventually getting a swirl. I started quilting again, setting up a small corner in the basement for my sewing machine. It wasn't the same as having a whole room, but it was something. It was mine. Emma became fascinated with the process and would sit beside me for hours, watching as I cut and pieced and stitched. I taught her how to thread a needle, how to choose colors that complemented each other, how to find patterns in chaos. Emma. Grandma, why do you make quilts? Maggie. Because it makes me happy, sweetheart, and because quilts keep people warm. Emma. But we have blankets from the store. Why make them yourself when you can just buy one? Maggie. Well, when you make something yourself, you put love into it. Every stitch is a little piece of your heart. So when someone wraps themselves in a quilt I've made, they're wrapping themselves in my love. They're wrapped in all the hours I spent thinking about them while I sewed. She thought about this for a moment, her little brow furrowed in concentration. Emma. Can you teach me to put love in stitches? Maggie. Absolutely, sweetheart. That's the most important skill I can teach you. Oliver, meanwhile, developed a special bond with Linda. Perhaps because they were both navigating bodies that didn't always cooperate. Perhaps because Linda had finally found someone who didn't expect anything from her except companionship. Whatever the reason, he would climb into her lap in the wheelchair and listen as she told him stories about when she was young, about the world she grew up in that seemed like ancient history to his 3-year-old mind. One afternoon, I walked in on them looking through an old photo album together. Linda had brought boxes of photographs when she moved in, and she had finally started unpacking them. Linda. And this is my Robert when he was just about your age, Oliver. See how he's holding that frog? He found it in the garden and insisted on keeping it as a pet. Wouldn't let it go for anything. Oliver. What was the frog's name? Linda. Princess Hopscotch. Your grandfather named her. Oliver. That's a silly name for a frog. Linda. It is, isn't it? He was a silly boy sometimes. But he grew up to be a wonderful man. A wonderful husband and father and son. She looked up and saw me standing in the doorway. Linda. Did you need something, Margaret? Maggie. No, I'm glad he has you to tell him these stories. I'm glad someone remembers Robert as a boy. Something passed between us, an acknowledgement of shared loss and shared love. We had both loved Robert in different ways, and we both missed him in different ways, and somehow that connection was stronger than all the years of conflict. Linda. Someone has to remember him as a boy with a pet frog. Someone has to keep those memories alive. Maggie. Yes, someone does. Daniel's career continued to improve. By the end of the first year, he had received a promotion and a substantial raise. He started paying me rent, despite my protests. He put money aside in a savings account every month. He and Vanessa started talking about looking for their own place again, started browsing real estate listings and discussing neighborhoods. I was surprised to find that the idea made me sad. Daniel. Mom, are you crying? Maggie. No, I have allergies. Daniel. You don't have allergies. You've never had allergies in your life. Maggie. Fine. Maybe I got a little dust in my eye. Daniel. Mom. Maggie. Okay, yes. I'm crying. I know it's silly. I should be happy that you're getting back on your feet. I am happy. I'm thrilled for you. Daniel. But? Maggie. But I've gotten used to having everyone here. The noise, the chaos, the pancake Saturdays, the trips to the park, even your mother-in-law's constant commentary on my cooking. Daniel. About that. Vanessa and I have been talking. Maggie. About what? Daniel. About Linda. She's doing better physically, but she's never going to be able to live alone again. She needs help with too many things. And the care facilities we can afford, the ones covered by her insurance, they're not great, Mom. We visited some of them. They're depressing, understaffed, the kind of places where people go to be forgotten. Maggie. What are you thinking? Daniel. We were wondering if she could stay here. With you. Even after we move out. If you would consider letting her live with you permanently. I stared at him, trying to process what he was asking. Maggie. You want me to live with your mother-in-law. Permanently. For the rest of her life. Daniel. I know it sounds crazy, but you two have actually become, not friends exactly, but something. You have coffee together every morning. You watch those old movies together. She talks about you now with respect, Mom. Real respect. And she's comfortable here. The house is set up for her wheelchair now. She knows the routines. She has her corner where she reads. She has her spot at the dinner table. And honestly, Mom, I think you'd be lonely without anyone here. I think you need her as much as she needs you. Maggie. I lived alone for 5 years before you moved in. I was fine. Daniel. Were you? Really? Because I remember calling you every Sunday and hearing the loneliness in your voice. I remember finding you asleep in Dad's recliner because you couldn't bear to sleep in the bed alone. I remember the doctor telling you that you needed to eat more, socialize more, live more. I didn't have an answer for that. The truth was, the 5 years between Robert's death and Daniel's move-in had been some of the loneliest of my life. I had filled the emptiness with quilting and book clubs and volunteer work. But at the end of every day, I came home to a silent house and an empty bed. I talked to the television. I talked to Robert's photograph on the mantel. I talked to myself. Maggie. I'll think about it. Daniel. That's all I'm asking. I thought about it. I thought about it while I made dinner and while I watched television and while I lay awake at 3 a.m, unable to sleep. I thought about what my life would look like with Linda as a permanent fixture, about the challenges and the frustrations and the occasional moments of unexpected connection. And then I thought about what my life would look like without her. Back to silence. Back to talking to myself and the television. Back to existing instead of living. Back to counting the hours until my next phone call, my next visit, my next moment of human contact. The next morning, I found Linda in the kitchen, struggling to reach the coffee mugs on the top shelf. Her left arm couldn't lift high enough, and she was standing on tiptoe in her wheelchair, reaching and failing. Maggie. Here, let me get that. I reached past her and grabbed 2 mugs, pouring coffee for both of us. Linda. Thank you. These tall cabinets are the bane of my existence. Whoever designed this kitchen was clearly 7 feet tall. Maggie. I could move the mugs to a lower shelf, if you're going to be staying longer term. She looked at me sharply, her eyes searching my face for meaning. Linda, what do you mean, longer term? Maggie, Daniel told me they're planning to move out soon. Maybe in a few months, once they save enough for a down payment. He also mentioned that they're worried about where you'll go. He mentioned that they asked me to consider letting you stay. Linda, I see. And what did you tell him? Maggie, I told him I'd think about it. Linda, and have you? Thought about it? Maggie, I've thought about nothing else for the past 12 hours. Linda, and what conclusion have you reached? I set down my coffee cup and looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who had made my life difficult for 40 years. This woman who had criticized my cooking, my housekeeping, my parenting, my very existence. This woman who had somehow become important to me. Maggie, what if you stayed here, after they move out, with me, permanently? Linda, why would you want that? I've been horrible to you for 40 years. I've made snide comments and passive-aggressive remarks and done everything I could to make you feel inferior. Why would you want to spend the rest of your life with me? Maggie, because I've gotten used to having someone around. Because this house is too quiet without voices in it. Because I've gotten used to our morning coffees and our afternoon movies and your running commentary on everything I do wrong. And as much as it pains me to admit it, I've gotten used to you specifically. Linda, that might be the most reluctant invitation I've ever received. Maggie, it's the only one you're going to get, so I suggest you take it. Another long pause. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, could hear birds singing outside the window, could hear my own heart beating in my chest. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. A real smile. Warm and genuine. Linda, fine. I accept your reluctant invitation, but I'm not giving up my criticism of your cooking. Maggie, I wouldn't expect you to. Linda, and I still think your taste in television is appalling. Maggie, duly noted. Linda, and I'm allergic to that horrible air freshener you use in the bathroom. Maggie, I'll switch to a different scent. Linda, make sure it's unscented. Fragrances give me headaches. Maggie, of course they do. And just like that, our arrangement was settled. Daniel and Vanessa found an apartment 3 months later, a nice 2-bedroom in a good school district, just 15 minutes from my house. They had saved enough for a security deposit and first month's rent, and their credit had begun to recover. The apartment complex was willing to take a chance on them. They moved out on a sunny Saturday in October, and I helped them pack while trying not to cry. The basement bedroom where they had lived for over a year was stripped bare, the walls showing the marks where they had hung pictures and the children's artwork. The children's room, my former sewing room, was empty once again, and I stood in the doorway for a long moment, remembering how it had looked with the bunk beds and the toy chest and the nightlight shaped like a rocket ship. Emma hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might break. She had grown so much in the past year, not just physically, but emotionally. She was no longer the frightened 5-year-old who had nightmares about losing her home. She was a confident 6-year-old who had learned that homes can be found in unexpected places. Emma, I don't want to leave you, Grandma. Can't I stay here with you and Great-Grandma Linda? I'll be good, I promise. I'll help with the cooking and the cleaning and everything. Maggie, oh, sweetheart. You're going to have your own room in your new apartment. With a window that looks out at the park, you can watch the birds and the squirrels, and you'll come visit me every Sunday, I promise. Emma, every Sunday? You promise? Maggie, every single Sunday, rain or shine. We'll make pancakes and play games and work on our quilts together. Emma, can we still make a quilt for my bed? The one with the unicorns? Maggie, we're going to finish that quilt, sweetheart. It's almost done. Just a few more squares. Oliver clung to my leg until Daniel gently pried him off. He was clutching Rex, of course, and the tiny dinosaur blanket he had made with my help was wrapped around Rex's shoulders. Oliver, Rex wants to stay with Grandma. Maggie, Rex can visit anytime he wants. But he needs to go with you, to keep you safe in your new home. That's very important work for a dinosaur. Oliver, will you be lonely, Grandma? The question hit me harder than I expected. From the mouths of babes. Maggie, I have Great-Grandma Linda to keep me company. We'll take care of each other. Oliver, okay, but if you get too lonely, you can call me. I'm good at talking. Maggie, I know you are, sweetheart. You're the best talker I know. Vanessa hugged me last, holding on longer than the others. Vanessa, I can never thank you enough for everything. You saved us, Maggie. You saved our family. Maggie, you would have found a way. You're strong, all of you. Vanessa, maybe. But we didn't have to find a way alone. That made all the difference. The house felt too big and too quiet after they left. Linda and I sat in the living room, surrounded by the silence, and I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. The absence of the children's voices was almost physical, a presence of its own. Linda, this is strange. Maggie, very strange. Linda, I got used to the noise. Maggie, me too. Linda, what do we do now? Maggie, I have no idea. We looked at each other for a long moment. And then, despite everything, we both started to laugh. The transition wasn't smooth. There were arguments about thermostat settings. Linda liked it warm, I liked it cool. We eventually compromised on a temperature that left us both mildly uncomfortable, which felt fitting somehow. There were disagreements about what constituted acceptable volume for the television and whose turn it was to choose what to watch. We developed a schedule. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays were mine. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays were hers. Sundays were for the family dinners, when the house filled with noise again, and neither of us had to choose anything because the children did all the choosing for us. There were days when we barely spoke to each other, when the old resentments bubbled up and the air grew thick with unspoken grievances. I would catch her looking at me with that old expression of judgment, and I would feel my defenses rising. She would make a comment about the way I had folded the laundry or the temperature of her tea, and I would bite my tongue so hard I tasted blood. There were nights when I lay awake wondering why I had agreed to this, why I had voluntarily signed up for a lifetime of criticism and complaints. I would stare at the ceiling and think about what my life might have been like if I had said no, if I had told Daniel that I was sorry but I couldn't help, if I had protected my peace and my space and my carefully constructed identity. But then I would hear Linda coughing in the next room, or moving restlessly in her hospital bed, and I would remember that she was alone too. She was scared too. She had lost everything she had known and was trying to find her footing in a world that no longer made sense to her, just like me. There were also moments of unexpected grace. Linda helped me sort through Robert's old belongings, things I had been unable to face alone for 5 years. His clothes still hung in the closet, untouched since the day he died. His books still lined the shelves, bookmarks still in place from whatever he had been reading. His reading glasses still sat on the nightstand where he had left them the morning he collapsed in the backyard. Linda, you haven't moved any of this. Maggie, I couldn't. Every time I tried, I felt like I was erasing him. Linda, you're not erasing him, Margaret. You're making room for yourself. He would want that. She picked up a sweater from the pile, a cable-knit navy blue that I had given Robert for his 60th birthday. Linda, this sweater, I remember when you gave this to him. He wore it to our house for Christmas dinner that year. He said it was the warmest sweater he ever owned. Maggie, he wore it every winter. Even when it got holes in the elbows, he wouldn't let me throw it away. He said clothes have memories. Linda, he was sentimental like that, like his father. Robert Sr. kept every letter I ever wrote him, even the angry ones. Even the ones where I said terrible things I didn't mean. Maggie, I didn't know that. Linda, we don't know a lot of things about each other, Margaret. Maybe it's time we started learning. We went through box after box, memory after memory. His golf clubs, his college textbooks, the watch his father gave him when he graduated law school, the tie he wore to our wedding, still knotted because he had been too nervous to untie it properly and had just slipped it over his head. It took weeks. We cried sometimes, laughed others. We told stories about Robert that the other had never heard, piecing together a complete picture of the man we had both loved. She knew the boy who had been afraid of thunderstorms and had to sleep with a nightlight until he was 12. I knew the man who had held my hand during childbirth and cried when he first saw Daniel's face. I taught Linda how to use a computer so she could video chat with Emma and Oliver. It took patience, both hers and mine. She was frustrated by technology, convinced that it was designed to confuse her and make her feel stupid. Linda, why does it need a password? Who is trying to break into my electronic mail? Maggie, it's just a security measure, Linda. Everyone has passwords. Linda, in my day, we wrote letters, on paper, with pens, and no one needed passwords to open their mailbox. Maggie, in your day, they also had rotary phones and no air conditioning. Technology changes. But she learned, eventually. And the first time she successfully video called Emma on her own, her face lit up with such joy that I felt tears prick my eyes. We discovered a shared love of old movies, the black and white classics from the 1940s and 50s. We would sit together in the evenings, watching Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant, making popcorn and commenting on the fashion and the dialogue. Linda, they don't make movies like this anymore. Maggie. They don't. Everything now has explosions. Linda. And superheroes. I'm sick of superheroes. Maggie. Me too. Give me a good love story any day. Linda. Or a mystery. I do love a good mystery. Maggie. I have a whole shelf of mystery novels. You're welcome to borrow them. Linda. I might just do that. We discovered shared taste in books, too. I gave her one of my Agatha Christie novels, and she devoured it in 2 days, then demanded more. Soon she was making her way through my entire collection, and we would discuss the plots and the suspects and whether we had guessed the murderer before the reveal. One evening, about a year after Daniel and his family had moved to their new apartment, Linda and I were watching the sunset together from the back porch. We had made it a habit, this evening ritual. We would bring our tea out and sit in the fading light and watch the sky change colors. Linda. Margaret, I want to tell you something. Maggie. You're not dying, are you? Because I'm not ready for another death announcement on this porch. Linda. No, I'm not dying. At least not any faster than usual. I'm 78. Everything is dying a little bit every day. Maggie. Cheerful. Linda. I'm serious. I want to tell you that I think this might be the happiest I've been in 20 years. Maggie. Really? Despite the terrible cooking and appalling taste in television? Linda. Despite all of that, yes. I spent so long being angry at the world for all the things I had lost. My health, my independence, my husband, my home. I was so focused on what was taken from me that I forgot to appreciate what I still had. But now, here, with you, I feel like I'm finally learning to be grateful. Maggie. That's a beautiful thing to say, Linda. Linda. Don't get used to it. I have a reputation to maintain. Maggie. Wouldn't dream of it. But later that night, after she had wheeled herself off to bed and I was alone in the quiet house, I thought about what she had said, about happiness and gratitude and the unexpected places we find both. I had started this journey as a woman forced to give up her peaceful retirement for the chaos of a multi-generational household. I had resented it, feared it, dreaded every moment of it. But somewhere along the way, something had shifted. My son's announcement that day, the one that had sent my world spinning off its axis, had turned out to be not an ending, but a beginning. The beginning of a new chapter I never could have written for myself, but was grateful to be living. Emma and Oliver visit every Sunday for dinner now. They burst through the front door like tiny hurricanes, full of energy and stories and demands for Grandma's attention. Emma is in high school now, a beautiful young woman who still sits with me while I quilt, who carries pieces of my heart in every stitch I've taught her. Oliver is in middle school, gangly and awkward and developing his father's sense of humor. Daniel looks healthier than he has in years, the weight of financial stress lifted from his shoulders. He made partner at his firm 2 years ago. Vanessa got her teaching certification and teaches 3rd grade at a school she loves. They bought a house last year, a beautiful 3-bedroom with a yard for the kids, and a garden that Vanessa tends with devotion. And Linda has become something I never expected. Not exactly a friend, but something deeper and more complicated. A witness to my life, a person who understands what it means to lose and to survive, and to find joy again in unexpected places. We're both old women now. I'm 75 and Linda is 80. Our bodies are slower, more fragile. I have arthritis in my hands that makes quilting painful some days. Linda's stroke symptoms have worsened slightly, and she needs more help with daily tasks than she used to. But we take care of each other. I help her bathe and dress on the difficult days. She reminds me to take my medication and eat proper meals. We have become each other's keepers, each other's family. Last week she paid me a compliment, an actual, genuine compliment, with no sarcasm or qualification attached. Linda. Margaret, that quilt you made for Oliver's birthday is exquisite. The colors, the pattern, the way the light catches the different fabrics. You're a true artist. I was so shocked I nearly dropped my tea. Maggie. I'm sorry, did you just say something nice about my work? Without any qualifiers? Linda. Don't let it go to your head. I still think your color choices are questionable at best. That orange you used in Emma's quilt was ghastly. Maggie. There's the Linda I know and tolerate. Linda. Tolerate. That's progress from last year. Maggie. It is, isn't it? We smiled at each other. 2 old women who had somehow found a way to coexist, to support each other, to maybe even care about each other a little. I think about Robert sometimes. Wonder what he would make of this strange new family we've created from the wreckage of his old one. His mother and his wife, living together by choice. His grandchildren running through the house on Sundays. His son grown into a man he would be proud of. I think he would be pleased. He always believed that family was about more than blood, that it was about showing up for each other even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. That's what we've done. That's what we continue to do. Life is messier than I ever imagined it would be. Louder, more chaotic, more frustrating, more wonderful. Some days, I miss the quiet of my old life, the simplicity of being just Maggie. I miss having my sewing room. I miss being able to watch whatever I want on television. I miss the freedom of answering to no one but myself. But most days, I'm grateful for the noise, for the chaos, for the family that fills my home and my heart. I'm grateful for morning coffee with Linda and Sunday dinners with the grandchildren. I'm grateful for the quilts I still make and the stories I still tell and the love that still fills these rooms. When my son said that his wife, mother-in-law, and kids were moving in, that it was crowded, but they had decided they had no other choice, I thought my world was ending. I thought I was losing myself, losing the identity I had worked so hard to build after Robert died. What I didn't realize was that I wasn't losing myself. I was finding a bigger version of myself, a version that had room for more people, more love, more life. So I opened my door. I opened my home. I opened my heart. And what came through that door changed everything. Not just for them, but for me. Because sometimes the greatest transformations come not from the adventures we choose, but from the ones that choose us. Sometimes the hero's journey isn't about slaying dragons or finding treasures. Sometimes it's about making room at the table for one more person, even when you thought there was no room left. Sometimes it's just about saying yes. And I said yes. And my life became bigger and richer and more beautiful than I ever could have imagined. That's my story. Not a fairy tale with a perfect ending, but something better. A real story with a real ending. An ending that's actually just another beginning. Because that's the thing about life, isn't it? It just keeps going. It keeps surprising you. It keeps demanding more of you than you think you have to give. And then somehow, miraculously, you find more. I found more. More patience than I knew I possessed. More love than I thought my heart could hold. More family than I ever expected. And Linda, she found something too. She found a home. Not just a place to live, but a real home, with someone who understood her, challenged her, and ultimately accepted her exactly as she was. We're not best friends. We never will be. But we're something better, maybe. We're family. Complicated, frustrating, beautiful family. And I wouldn't have it any other way.